The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 250. Softball begins play this week in the Women's College World Series, while Big Ten tournament champion baseball begins regional action in Louisville. And there is plenty more to talk about. That and more on this week's show. Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast, brought to you in partnership with Maize & Brew, your best source for quality Michigan Wolverine news, rumors, analysis, stats, and scores from the fan perspective, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a part of the V-Sporto Network. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. It was a big weekend for Michigan softball and baseball. Softball finished off number 16 Georgia in the Super Regionals and will take on Alabama in the College World Series this Thursday in Oklahoma City. Baseball surprised a lot of us by winning the Big Ten tournament and securing an automatic bid into NCAA tournament play. They will begin action this Friday in the Louisville Regional against Bradley. We'll have more on this later during Wolverine Quick Hits. Today's show is jam-packed, so we won't waste any time getting into it. We all know football recruiting is heading into the very important summer months with satellite camps, a quarterback camp in Ann Arbor, and much more. Joining me in just a minute on Gameday will be recruiting analyst Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. I'm sure all Michigan fans are aware of what a great job Steve does, and you will enjoy hearing what he has to say about Michigan's recruiting class and who the Wolverines and Jim Harbaugh have on the radar. Then later on Game Day Extra, I'll be joined by Anbender from MGoBlog, one of their outstanding writers. We'll talk about a myriad of topics, so I invite you to stay with us for all of that. On deck is Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports with the latest in Michigan football recruiting news. Here on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network. With us on Michigan Game Day this week for our recruiting update for the month of May, Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. Great to finally get you on the show, Steve.
How's it going, Mike? Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's going well. It's May, the end of May. For you guys that cover recruiting, I mean, it's there is no off-season recruiting anymore, but it's big time coming up in the summer. There's a lot of action.
Yeah, I mean, May. The coaches are on the road right now. I think they're actually just finishing up this week. June, though, as I know, recruiting coordinator Chris Partridge kind of put out a tweet yesterday. It's kind of time to buckle up, as they say. June's going to be pretty crazy between the satellite camps, the Michigan summer camps, and also the Sound Mind, Sound Body camp in Detroit's a pretty big deal for Michigan. They get to work one-on-one with the kids. So I think June's going to be a month where you're going to start to see things pick up a little bit.
Yeah, big month. Some Michigan fans, Steve, starting to get a bit nervous. I get emails saying, hey, we only have 6 commits so far, and they're watching what the Buckeyes are doing in Miami's great recruiting class, and, the top 10 for right now. It's a new staff. They're getting their bridges built, their relationships established. It should all start to change as far as commitments rolling in this summer, don't you think?
I think so. I think June, also besides them just being busy, I do think June's a month where you're going to see them pick up at least a few guys. They got some big targets coming back up on the campus or coming up for the first time. As far as the relationships and stuff goes, I think one thing that people kind of fail to realize, you alluded to it a little bit, but obviously Ohio State coming off a national championship is going to be recruiting well. I mean, it's just natural after doing what they did that, its top players are going to want to go there. And then Michigan State too. I mean, 2 top 5 finishes 2 years in a row. They've been actually are hotter right now in the recruiting trail than I can really ever remember them being under Mark D'Antonio. So when you're talking, I know a lot of people always point to the in-state kids like Donnie Corley and Lavert Hill, guys like that. Those other staffs have had longer time to develop relationships with those prospects. And while Michigan's done a really good job in getting back in the race, especially with Corley, I know he'll probably end up at Michigan State, but Michigan did a pretty good job kind of getting themselves back in there for a while. I think with the upcoming senior kids, it's just difficult, to kind of make inroads that late. I know it's crazy. It's still almost a year to signing day, but it's still kind of late actually for those kids. So, I think as far as regionally goes, I think the junior class, the 17 kids, if Michigan struggles with those kids, then I think, there's some level of concern as far as the in-state regional type recruiting goes. But, so they've gone more national. And that's why people need to be patient as far as commitments go, because a lot of times these kids from Florida, Texas, California can't afford just to, drive out to Michigan on a weekend and check things out, So
Yeah.
it's a slower process. But they've actually the staff's done a pretty good job of getting some of their top guys from those areas on campus early. And I think it's put them in some good position with some elite guys.
Well, as we mentioned, we have 6 commits so far in this class of 2016. A lot of offers out there. An email that I get, or a question I get a lot, Steve, is where do I think this class is going to end up? In the 20 to 25 range? Do you have any kind of an idea on that?
I think it'll be better than that, but it's also with May, again, it's only May, there's a lot of kids that may make a decision based on what they see on the field for Michigan this year, and that's even more prevalent when you're talking about some of the elite national type guys that they're targeting. They're in it for a lot of their top targets, but like I said, the flip side is a lot of those kids don't really plan to decide anytime in the immediate near future. So, but I part of me thinking that they're going to have a better than top 20 class is a belief that I think that their on-field product will be good enough this year to entice some of those kids to maybe commit. Now, I just did a class projection piece on Wolverine 24/7 about a week ago, and we also have another tool called Class Calculator where you can kind of add up there's points for each commit and kind of add them up and calculate around where the class would be. And the class I projected would have finished 3rd in the 2015 class. Now, I don't think they're going to finish that high, but I do think a top 10 finish is very, very viable as long as they don't disappoint on the field this season.
If everything goes according to plan, you think it's very reasonable to expect a top 10 class?
I think so, yeah. I mean, there's guys, you got kids like Caleb Kelly, 5-star linebacker out of California that, we think Michigan's in good shape with. You got Rashawn Gary, the number 1 player in the country. If I haven't put a 24/7 sports crystal ball prediction on him yet, but if I was to put one on, I would probably put it on for Michigan. He has the connection to Chris Partridge, his former high school coach, who's now the recruiting coordinator at Michigan. There's a handful, probably more than a handful, of like top 100, top 150 guys that Michigan is right in the thick of it for, if not leading, But like I said, it's a lot different than what happened with Brady Hope's staff. His Hope's staff did a really good job at locking up elite regional prospects early in the process. They were a little less national. Matter of fact, I want to say I think Harbaugh's already gotten more kids from the SEC footprint since January than Hope got all 4 years he was in Ann Arbor. So it's definitely a different process. It's just one that fans, I think, are going to have to be a little bit more patient on.
Coach Harbaugh is spreading the net nationally, no question about it. You just mentioned Rashawn Gary, young man from Paramus Catholic, and Michigan has the right connections to bring him in. Let's hope that pays dividends. But there's also some other big-time talent in Jersey that we're in on. We've got wide receiver Donald Stewart and Brad Hawkins, defensive end Ron Johnson. You've got an athlete in Amir Mitchell. Would those guys be considered Michigan leans right now, or just interested?
I actually think outside of Mitchell, I think everybody else you named, I would say as of right now, that Michigan's probably ahead for. I know Johnson's the only one that's gone public about it. That was about 3 weeks ago at an NFTC, the Nike Football Training Combine up in New Jersey. But I would say that Michigan is definitely ahead for Stewart. He'll be on campus May 30th, so about 9 days from now. I think there's a decent possibility that he may commit, on that visit. I mean, if not, I don't think it'll last much longer. Michigan's easily his best offer, and he has the same connection, as a Paramus Catholic kid that Gary does. So, I think there's a really good chance with him. Hawkins is kind of the same as Johnson is. I think Michigan's a slight leader. I know South Carolina's a threat for sure. Hawkins has gotten some nice offers lately, though, from Auburn, Oregon, a couple other ones too. But he's taken off a little bit, but I still think Michigan's kind of in good shape there. Now, the Amir Mitchell one's a little bit different. He's kind of being viewed as a sort of an in-between prospect in terms of, is he a wide receiver or is he going to grow into a tight end at the college level? I know that's something Michigan's kind of battled when they're evaluating him and stuff, is really where can we project him? And I know Ohio State, who those two schools are kind of considered the top two schools, are kind of going through the same thing with him. I think if Ohio State wants Mitchell, I think that's where he'll end up. But they may not have room. They're in with a lot of other top guys, as you'd expect. So it may be a situation where Michigan gets him by default, but that's about as good a default prize as you're going to get. He's a top 100 guy. It's just a matter of where's he going to play best in college.
Well, with Rashawn Gary, and you get 3 or 4 of these kids out of New Jersey, that's a big haul out of that state.
Absolutely, and I actually think New Jersey is kind of one of the more underrated states in terms of talent. You're always going to talk about California, Texas, Georgia, Florida, even Louisiana, I think is a really talent-heavy state. But New Jersey's always got like 6 or 7 really elite guys. I know in the 2017 class, the juniors, I think Michigan's already offered 6 or 7 guys, and they're all ranked within our top 24/7 for the 2017 class. So, it's definitely a state that if you can get in and get their top prospects, you're going to get some good ball players.
Well, Steve, Michigan's offered some big-time offensive linemen in the class of 2016, and check me on some of these names if I'm off, but Ben Bredesen, Terrence Davis, a local kid we hear a lot about, Michael Onwenu, and Devery Hamilton. How many in that group do we have a good chance to bring in?
I think they have a good chance with all 4 that you just named. I know Bredesen's coming up on the 30th as well. I think, he's a Wisconsin kid. A lot of people peg him to be a Badger just because that's what kids in Wisconsin do. But I actually think it's going to either be Notre Dame or Michigan. Right now, I'd actually probably give Notre Dame the slight edge. They did an excellent job with him the last time he was on campus, and they are in the midst of building an amazing recruiting class on the offensive line. I think they kind of see him as the final piece of that puzzle. Davis, pretty sure Michigan still leads for him too. I know I have my crystal ball on Michigan with Davis. One of his close friends though, Dwayne Haskins, just committed to Maryland at quarterback. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the country. That could play a role in putting Maryland back in there as far as that goes. So I think he's a Michigan or a Maryland kid at the end. Hamilton is a Michigan or Stanford guy. He's an excellent student in the classroom. He's now seen both Michigan and Stanford close up. I think those probably comprise his top 2 schools right now. That one I think could probably go either way. I know Michigan felt really good about him after that visit. I think it was about 3-4 weeks ago. But Stanford's another school that's actually putting together a really great class right now, and some kids are talking about heading out there to play together. So, and Michael, he's a great kid. Michael's been one of my favorite kids to cover in that class. He got kind of hosed at the opening regional in Chicago that I was at. We had him as our best player there. He didn't get the invite to the opening combine at the Nike headquarters in Oregon, but he told us there that Michigan's kind of made him their biggest priority from his standpoint. It feels like they're recruiting him the hardest. Obviously, the Cass Tech, thing. They're sending more kids to other places, but Michigan still does a good job there. I think right now I'd probably have to peg Michigan as the favorite there. There's a really good chance that those 4 guys comprise the rest of their offensive line class. I mean, there's other guys they really like, but those are 4 guys that as of right now, and one thing people always kind of forget about recruiting is that things can literally change at the drop of a hat. But as we're talking right now, those are 4 guys that all could easily end up as Wolverines.
Who are some of the other highly rated offensive linemen on Michigan's radar?
Sure. One kid that's really rocketed up their radar recently is a kid named Michael Elatif. He actually is from Honolulu, Hawaii. Tim Drevno was out there yesterday to check in on him. He's somebody who, is a guy that they didn't offer right away, but offered him probably about a month and a half ago, and he is, they're in frequent contact. I know they'd love him to come out sometime, but again, Hawaii to Ann Arbor, that's a long, expensive trip. So if he can't make it out and his spot's gone, then, there's really nothing much Michigan can do. I know another kid that's really high on their list is Alex Kingbulu. He's a 3-star kid out of, I think it's Harbor City, California, near the LA area. Michigan was his first offer, and I think that Drevno may have had an eye on him back when he was at USC, kind of kept it to himself, I'm assuming. Kingbulu was on campus last month, loved the visit. Drevno told him he reminded him of a Joe Staley type player, from the San Francisco 49ers. And, Kingbulu's a kid that he's one of those very raw prospects that I think the coaches see as sort of a little bit more of a project, but a kid that if he figures it out, could be a superstar on the offensive tackle. Those are 2 kind of the biggest guys I feel like outside of the 4 that you named are in there. I know some other guys that Will Fries out of Concord, New Jersey. He's the other guy that they really like. I think he'll be on campus in a couple weeks. They just hosted a kid named Cole Van Lannen out of Wisconsin, another Wisconsin product, a few weeks ago. I know they're pretty high on him at tackle, but the 4 we talked about before, and then those 2 guys I just named, I probably identified those guys as probably the top 6 at this point.
A lot of talent in that group, so it'll be fun to see how that shakes out. A lot of local fans have been waiting for Des Fitzpatrick, who's going to be playing at Waterford Mott this fall, to flip and commit to Michigan. Do you think there's a chance of that happening this summer, or is he going to play it through the season?
I think he's going to slow things down. I know he visited Michigan more times than we even could keep track of there during the March-April period. My belief right now is that I think he's going to kind of slow things down, see how the process plays out. I know Louisville kind of made a strong push back after he was on campus at Michigan so many times. I think it's kind of up in the air whether or not he ends up in this class right now. I know probably at this time last month it would have been a different case, but I think he's one of those guys that you obviously always have to keep an eye on, and I'm sure he'll be back on campus, during the month of June. I'm assuming he may camp there for a day. But probably a guy I would, like I said, keep an eye on, but I wouldn't necessarily peg him in as a member of the class.
Well, with us on our May recruiting update this week is Steve Lorenz from Wolverine 24/7 Sports. A lot of my listeners follow Steve and know what an incredible job he does on the recruiting trail. You've heard him talking about these players so far in the last few minutes. Steve, wideout is an area of concern. We thought we stocked up a lot of talent at the wideout over the last couple of years, and there may still be talent that develops there in the next year or so, but a lot of question marks. Who are some of the wideouts in this upcoming class of 2016 that Michigan has targeted?
So we went over Donald Stewart and Brad Hawkins are 2 guys that I think are pretty decent chances to maybe be in this class. I think the target number right now is 3. Again, that's another thing that fans seem to sometimes lose sight of. It might just be because they don't follow it that closely, but the numbers are always fluid. They could maybe look at the roster after fall camp and think maybe we want to take 4. But I think as of right now, I think 3 is kind of the number. I know one kid they actually just offered last night, a Canadian kid named Chase Claypool out of Abbotsford up in British Columbia. Is a guy that I know Michigan kind of they've had their eye on him for a while. I just don't think they've gotten a chance to go up and see him in person. I know tight ends coach Jay Harbaugh was up there yesterday. Apparently his workout went really, really well. They offered him a scholarship. They actually feel like they're in a pretty decent spot with him right now. Actually, I think Oregon's the other school maybe to watch out there, but Chase Claypool is definitely a name to watch. Trey Nixon, kid out of Melbourne High School in Vieira, Florida. Vieira High School in Melbourne, Florida. Sometimes I mix that up. But anyway, he's more of your slot burner type kid. He's expressed heavy interest in visiting Michigan this summer. The thing with him is he has offers from everybody and seems incredibly wide open right now. That could be a recruitment that could go till signing day, and I'm not sure there'd be a spot. But he's definitely a player that Michigan would love to have. I know two players that Michigan's kind of trying to make a push for. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's twins. It's Devin and Donovan Duvernay out of Saxe High School in Texas. Devin I think is the top wide receiver in the class. He's pretty much the all-around package. Donovan's more like what Nixon was sort of a slot guy, can stretch the field type player. They've made pushes for them, and the two have expressed a lot of interest in playing with each other, and I think that's one of the reasons Michigan offer both players. Sort of wait and see. If they can get them on campus, then there's always a shot. I think most people think they're going to stay closer to home, but those are definitely two guys that I would add to that list. And trying to think of who else. Well, Mitchell could be a wide receiver also. Like I said, it's sort of dependent on where they see him. I know they want him to be a wide receiver, but he's already at 6'3", 220. I mean, that's potentially tight end size kid once he hits a college weight room and stuff. But like I said, Hawkins and Stewart are two guys that I really feel pretty confident as of now will be in the class. I think wide receiver is a spot where you might see them throw some later offers out as they continue to evaluate. That's kind of the way they've been approaching it right now, is dropping as many lines as they can, kind of see who bites and goes from there. And everyone's going to ask about Donnie Corley. I think he'll end up in Michigan State for various reasons. I think he's kind of favored Michigan State for a while. I know the Soup Campbell hire, as far as recruiting coordinator in state, may help put Michigan back in that race. I just don't know if it'll be enough by the time he wants to decide.
Well, one of the best kickers in the nation is right here in our backyard, Quinn Norden. He's taking his time on a decision. Of course, he was offered already. Do you think there's a pretty good chance he lands in Ann Arbor?
I think so. I think with Norden, I think it's going to be a situation where Michigan's going to want to see if they need a kicker in this class, and that's kind of where the funky thing about the offers have kind of come in. They've offered a lot of prospects, and then they kind of evaluate. As they continue to evaluate their roster, they'll decide if a player is somebody they want to take or not. I think if they want a kicker in the class, and I think there's a decent chance that they do, just to shore up, build some depth there. I know they don't necessarily want to spend two classes in a row with Andrew David coming in 2015. But if they feel like they need that depth, that kicker, I think that Norden would choose Michigan if Michigan truly wanted him to be part of the class. And like I said, I mean, special teams always gets overlooked in recruiting, and having two top kickers like that in a row would really, help build Michigan back up in terms of, Michigan used to have one of the best kickers in the country every year, back with Remy Hamilton, Hayden Epstein, and those guys like that. I think they want to try to get back to that.
Well, we've covered quite a few of the kids in the 2016 class in-state. Are there any that we've missed who Michigan is still in on right here in-state?
Not really. I mean, Lavert Hill, that's been kind of a weird recruitment. He's committed to Penn State, right now. Michigan State just offered him. He was on campus at Michigan State. I don't think he sticks with Penn State. He keeps saying he's 100%, but I think that's just to keep people from asking him a bunch of questions about it. I do know that Hill is one of Michigan's top two targets at cornerback. The other one is David Long out of Loyola High School in Los Angeles. They would love to take Hill, Delano Hill's brother. I just don't know, if it's going to work out or not. I could see him ending up at Michigan State. I could see him even ending up at Ohio State, maybe if Ohio State wants to take another cornerback. So Lavert Hill's kind of the other one. But besides that, though, I feel like the board has pretty much been decided, with Michael Jordan committing to Ohio State. Corley kind of things are starting to become more clear with him than they have for a while. And Fitzpatrick, is kind of still out there. But besides that, I think it could be a situation. Maybe we'll see a couple guys get invited to camp this summer. I know one kid that I've been telling our readers about is a kid named Cedric Lattimore out of East English Village Prep in Detroit. He just committed to Iowa last week, but Michigan's had their eye on him for a while. He could either be a defensive end or tight end. I definitely think Michigan wants him to come to camp, and if they do invite him, I assume that he'll attend. He's a guy that could be maybe a late offer. But really, though, I think that you're going to see an incredibly diverse class geographically to finish out.
It's starting to look that way. Steve, you were around covering Brady Hoke's recruiting, and Brady's classes were, for the most part, very highly regarded. And now Jim Harbaugh comes in, and we expect him to amp it up on the recruiting trail. So you had a chance to watch how they both recruited. Are there any major differences you notice in the style as to how they approach recruiting?
It's like night and day in terms of off-campus, how the logistics of how each one approaches the recruiting process. The thing Michigan's been kind of not really criticized, but a lot of people have commented on the offers, like we've already kind of talked about. They've offered a ton of kids. And I actually just wrote about that the other day because I get a lot of questions about it. Well, I think with the Harbaugh staff, I think what you're seeing is that they have the utmost confidence in their ability to develop a wide variety of players. And so the way they're approaching it is, like I alluded to earlier, is like, they're going to drop as many lines out there as they can, and then they're going to see who bites. And whoever bites, those will be the guys that they'll really go after and see if they can add them. With Hoke, as far as the offers go, they were much more concentrated and tried to take more of a concerted effort towards a consolidated group that they maybe had predetermined after evaluations. And I think both strategies are effective. I mean, like you said, Hope actually recruited really well. It was just a matter of developing on the field is really what didn't get done. It's been really interesting to see the differences. I know once the kids get on campus, I think the Harbaugh staff has taken a pretty similar approach as far as Hope did in terms of making the academic side of Michigan a major priority, especially when the parents and coaches are involved in the process for a certain kid. They've made it very personable when players are on campus. But the other thing, too, though, is that, Harbaugh's he's been given more resources to invest and establish more manpower. I mean, they have, like I said, Sue Campbell earlier is now sort of the in-state recruiting coordinator. You have Chris Partridge, I've already mentioned a couple times. You also have Matt Doherty, who they brought up from Miami, Florida. I mean, that's, under Hoke, it was pretty much Chris Singletary and Jeff Hecklinski, and Hecklinski was a wide receivers coach, so he already had another much more important, thing on his plate. So it's kind of been, with Harbaugh, it's been increased manpower has led to increased spectrum in terms of who they're comfortable offering and approaching, because they have the manpower to aggressively recruit a much larger number of players than they did before. And I think that is one of those things where it's put them in a better position with some of those national recruits. Whereas under Hoke, there just wasn't enough, in some situations, there just wasn't enough time in the day for them as a staff to, maybe evaluate more players or put in the effort to make more kids feel like Michigan really wanted them type thing. So, like I said, I actually say what you want about Brady Hoke, but I mean, they were excellent recruiters, and I think that's one thing that you really couldn't take away from them. If Harbaugh could take his aggressiveness and then combine it with Hoke's staff's ability to recruit a kid and their family when they're on campus, then I think the sky would really be the limit for the Harbaugh staff in terms of recruiting.
Well, Steve, as we've mentioned, it's going to be a busy summer for you guys on the recruiting trail, and there's been a lot of hemming and hawing about Jim Harbaugh's satellite camp tour in June. Since the announcement was made this was going to happen, I think back in April. Since it's allowed under current rules, doesn't it sort of make you wonder why more coaches haven't taken this path before?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, to be honest with you, I think it's kind of dumb and misguided on other staff's parts not to do this. I mean, you sort of what I talked about earlier is that you have kids in California, Florida, Texas, maybe their families don't have a ton of money. They can't afford to, just pack up and fly up to Ann Arbor or fly up to Columbus or fly up to East Lansing on a whim, to check out each of those programs. So what you do is you take your resources to bring your program to them. And, with Michigan, I know, they did the Exposure U where they invited extended an invite to every college coach to come up and you can coach our camp if you want to. And what the idea behind that is that, again, this staff has the utmost confidence in their ability to coach up talent and develop it. And that's been a major point that they've made to recruits on the recruiting trail. So what the satellite camps will do is it'll give those kids an opportunity to experience that coaching firsthand, and get to experience what a Michigan practice would be like under Jim Harbaugh. I know last night I just talked to top 100 defensive end Xavier Kelly, who's a big target for them, and he mentioned that the Michigan satellite camp is a place where he'll get to live the day of a life of a Michigan football player at practice, and I think there's a lot of kids that feel that way. So to be able to bring the Michigan experience across the country and promote it to kids that are already interested, I mean, it's invaluable. I know some people try to downplay the role of it, but I thought the opposite. I think it's a huge, huge pulling point, and it'll give the parents and the high school coaches a chance to meet the Michigan staff. I mean, it really is almost like an on-the-road unofficial visit for a huge group of kids that Michigan would love to have.
Absolutely it is. I think it's a great idea. Nick Saban, of course, doesn't feel that way, and a lot of the other SEC coaches don't. And even some of the ACC coaches and ADs have chimed in about how unhappy they are about it, and they want the loophole closed so that this doesn't happen again. Do you think the NCAA is going to feel pressured to do that after this season?
The conspiracy theorist in me would say absolutely, because the SEC is the biggest cash cow for the NCAA, and they're going to want to do what they can to appease them. I don't know. I mean, it's natural that those staff and people from that area are going to throw a stink about it because that's where all the talent is. I mean, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, even Louisiana, and Texas. I mean, that's where a huge bulk of the high school football talent is at, and any advantage to schools up north with those kids is going to have to make them work harder. So it's natural that they're not in favor of it. I'm betting the NCAA probably does something. They already eliminated Michigan being able to promote it via social networks, so you're not going to see any more Chris Partridge tweets about the Summer Swarm Tour anymore because the NCAA already put a stop to it. So they're already kind of in the process, I think, of at least revamping it a little bit. Will they eliminate it as a whole? I mean, I guess I can't say for sure, but at this rate, it really wouldn't surprise me. I mean, which is ironic, like you said, because there really aren't many schools that have gone this route. It's not like it's some epidemic, that they that they need to fix. I mean, there's really only been a handful of schools. I know Michigan, Penn State are the two that immediately come to mind. But besides that, there aren't many other programs up north that have really worked that angle. So, but yeah, I think they'll end up probably getting rid of it in some capacity in the next couple of years.
Well, final thought from you, Steve, from a pure talent perspective, how far away is Michigan from being at the level of Ohio State or even Michigan State right now?
Good question. I think defensively, I don't think they're that far away. They are young and incredibly talented on defense. I really do. I'd be honest with you. I really think it just comes down to the quarterback position. Now, does that mean do I think they'd be on the exact same level? No, I don't think quite yet. I think they need more production out of the running back position. I think offensively they just really need more development. They need more talent, to really compete on a high level with those types of teams on a consistent basis. But I think the biggest thing is just they need a quarterback, that can make plays and not turn the ball over. That's been the biggest Achilles heel for this program for the last, going back to Rodriguez. I mean, they had the Sugar Bowl in 11, but I feel like they've been in the negative in turnover margin almost every year since 2007. So it's about building a strong program that can run the football and not turn the ball over, because I really think that the bridge from Hoke to Harbaugh in terms of the defense is not going to be that big of an obstacle. I mean, they still need a pass rusher. They still need a guy that can line up on the end and beat the tackle consistently and force other quarterbacks into mistakes. Lately, the last few years, they've had to rely on a lot of blitzes and bring some extra guys in to get that pressure. But I mean, linebacker-wise, defensive back-wise, defensive line-wise, in the middle particularly, I mean, I feel like that there's a pretty good base there. I mean, they'll be young at linebacker next year, but they may pull in some big-time names, in this next cycle. So that'll be one thing to watch in the 16 class. But to me, it's more about just building an identity offensively, beating people up front. I mean, you've seen what Michigan State has done to Michigan the last 3 or 4 years is they have dominated both sides of the line of scrimmage. That's the whole reason they've been able to win, the way that they have against Michigan. So, I think it's about building an identity on both sides of the ball up front, which Hoke never did. Despite being a line guy, they never were really able to do that. So I think that's where it starts, and then they got to have a quarterback that can manage the ball and not turn it over.
Well, hard to argue with that. Our guest here in our May recruiting update or roundup today for the first time has been from 24/7 Sports, Steve Lorenz. And I think from just listening in the last half hour or so, most listeners can see why Steve is a guy that Michigan fans love to follow. Good stuff, Steve. You've got a busy couple of summer months coming up, so we hope to get you back on sometime in the next few months and get your updates when some of these commitments start rolling in. So thank you so much for your time, Steve.
Of course, Mike. Thanks for having me on. And, let me know. I can come on whenever you need me.
Up next on our Game Day Extra segment, we'll be joined by Anbender from MGoBlog here on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Radio Network. Back with us on our Game Day Extra this week is Anbender from MGoBlog. Been a while, Ace, but great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
And here we are with our last show in May. It's that's sort of a slow time of the year, Ace. But with Jim Harbaugh around, he says he approaches life with enthusiasm unknown to mankind. He just doesn't seem to stop or stay out of the news, does he?
No, not even when he's on a mission trip to Peru. Apparently, he can't stay out of the news. So he's seemingly everywhere. And with everything that he's doing on the recruiting front, he's ruffled enough feathers to fill a lot of column inches for the rest of the summer, I think.
You mentioned his Peru mission trip, and for those of us who follow him on Twitter, quite an adventure. I never imagined a Michigan coach using Twitter like he does. He certainly does know how to get his message out, not only on Twitter, but other social media like no one we've seen.
Yeah, he's just a very engaging person, I guess, because I think what's great about his social media accounts and what really draws people into them is that it is very much just Jim Harbaugh. It's the same kind of sense you get from him when you hear him talking in a press conference. He's a little strange and very enthusiastic and obviously incredibly passionate about football. And that all comes through in spades when you read it through his Twitter account or see the write-ups that they've done for the recruiting events, for the satellite camps and stuff like that. Him signing "Sincerely Yours" in football, I think, is gonna stick in a lot of people's memories for a long time.
Well, Ace, a few of your thoughts on some topics. As we mentioned, it's not a real busy time right now, but Dennis Norfleet, who's been in the news the last couple of weeks, are you clear yet on whether he's suspended or just not on the team anymore?
The coaches have been pretty adamant about saying that it's an internal matter that they're handling without telling anyone what exactly they're doing. It's been a little confusing because some of Norfleet's old high school coaches from Detroit King, one in particular, has been pretty outspoken. And I don't know if everything he said has necessarily been factual, because he was talking about how Norfleet was off the team, and it seems like, at least for now, that's not the case. So it seems like he's suspended for the time being, and they're trying to make a determination about what the best next step is. But it's an unfortunate situation. It's odd to see a person who's heading into his senior season end up in a situation like that. So it'll be interesting to see how Harbaugh handles it, because that's kind of his first real disciplinary matter that's presented itself since he's taken over as coach. And especially since it seems to be on the academic side of things, it's something that a lot of people will be paying attention to.
Yeah, and it's such a murky thing. His coach at Martin Luther King had said this is not a Jim Harbaugh thing, this is a Brady Hoke thing, and he had X amount of credit hours, but he didn't have a major. It's really hard to get a beat on this story, isn't it?
As a former Michigan student, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because I know heading into my senior year, we had to do a senior audit. And they go through all your courses and make sure that you're on track to graduate with your majors. So the average student gets less academic oversight than your average student athlete does. There's a lot of strange stuff with the story, and it's tough to figure out what details to believe, especially since there's nothing coming out from the program itself other than no comments. Yeah, it's an odd situation, and one that, I love watching Dennis Norfleet. I'm really hoping he ends up back out there. I hope they're able to sort this out, but it'll be very interesting to see how it's handled.
Yeah, I think a lot of Michigan fans hope the same thing. So we'll just see how it shakes out in the coming weeks heading into to camp. Another disciplinary action that Coach Harbaugh has had to deal with is Associate Athletic Director for Football Jim Minnick, suspended indefinitely as a result of his recent DUI arrest. Anything new on that situation, Ace, or is it pretty much the same as the Norfleet thing? Mum is the word.
They've kind of released their statement, and he's been punished internally, I think. And with staff member off-field stuff, it always seems that stuff always seems to get handled behind the scenes unless it's serious enough to merit a firing, which this does not seem to be the case here. So it's an unfortunate situation. Obviously, DUI is obviously never a good thing, and I believe Harbaugh's got one in his past, and there have been a couple on the team recently. So, and they seem to be treating it with the seriousness that's required for that situation, and that's about as much as can be asked there.
Well, in other news, Ace, we've seen a handful of players transfer from the football team or, choose to use their last year of eligibility somewhere else. Do you think we're done with that, or is it likely we'll see more movement before summer workouts get underway?
It's possible. It seems like there's still, especially since there are a lot of rumors flying around about potential grad transfers coming in, and if that's the case, Michigan's pretty much right at that 85-person scholarship cap right now. So if they're anticipating that they're going to be bringing a couple more people in, that's going to necessitate a couple more people going out. And maybe they've caught wind of either an injury situation or players who are expected to leave at some point soon. But it seems like the roster is still not entirely settled yet, which, given a new coaching staff coming in and one that has the intensity of Harbaugh's staff, I can't say it's particularly surprising. The Callis transfer was a little surprising just because it seemed like he was in line to worst be the third corner. But it also, if Michigan was going to a man press system, he thrived a lot more as his own corner. So it does make sense for him to find a defense that may match his ability better if he's trying to make the NFL. But at this point, I'd be surprised if there wasn't more transfer activity before the season started. Just that's kind of the way it goes usually when a new coach comes in.
Yeah.
Michigan was very fortunate the last few years under Hoke to have almost no turnover at all, really. Once players committed and got on campus, they were almost always sticking it out. But that's been pretty unusual the last few years. I wouldn't necessarily get used to that as the normal way of things in the off season. I think it's going to be, especially this off season, we've already had more transfer activity than we've had the last couple of years, and I don't think it's quite done yet.
Yeah, we haven't had the attrition I thought. I mean, we expect when you get a new coach in, an intense coach like Jim Harbaugh, you are going to get guys transferring out and some attrition. I mean, it happened under Bo Schembechler, it happened under Brady Hoke. It's just the way it goes. But I don't think it's been that bad so far. But, when you get to May, I'm starting to think guys have pretty much, you would think, explored their options by this point.
Yeah, and they've at least survived spring practice, and they've still stuck around. So you do think that, for the most part, players should be relatively comfortable in whatever decision they've made up to this point. But it'll be interesting to see if there's anybody else who decides down the road. And it does seem like also injuries might play a factor. They're rumored that there's at least one or two offensive linemen that might need a medical red shirt at some point. That'll free up scholarships, but that's also something to keep an eye out on just in terms of depth along the O-line. So we'll see. I'm expecting a little bit more movement, but it will be interesting to see if there are any new transfer candidates popping up just because they have made it through spring practice. And at this point, in terms of transferring into another program and getting playing time, especially if it's any of the rising seniors, hopefully we're done with grad year transfers. But if guys wanted to play right away, this is kind of the time to move, or they're not going to have much time to prepare for whatever team they transfer to next.
In other news, we've been hearing about Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney pushing for a national discussion on freshman eligibility at the D1 level. Do you think on a national scale there's any real interest in that, or even chance that this has any legs?
No, I don't think there's even interest in the Big Ten outside of Delaney and whoever's in his ear, because there have been Big Ten coaches that have come out and spoken out against freshman eligibility, which they really have to do because they're recruiting freshmen. They want to get them to come to their schools and play. So if they're popping up in support of freshmen and eligibility, that's not going to go over so well on the recruiting trail. So not only has Delaney kind of thrown something out there that just is not going to happen at this point. I mean, he's trying to turn the clock back several decades in terms of where the NCAA has gone. It's an issue that I think is going in the wrong direction in terms of the general consensus and movement seems to be going towards more rights for the players. This would be going against that pretty hard, no matter how they can frame it as an academic thing. But when you're telling a student athlete that they can't play their sport for a year, that's not going to go over well with them.
You're talking about something that started in the 70s, so over 40 years ago. Freshman eligibility was reestablished. I mean, I think a lot of us at times say, it would be better academically, better socially. With 40 years on the books, it's not going to happen. It
speaks to somewhat of the tone deafness of Delaney at times, that he thinks it's even viable to throw this idea out there. And especially since it really does hurt the conference, and because it's going to be used against them when their coaches are recruiting, their teams are recruiting across all sports. That's where the proposal's going. I think people realize, hopefully, that there's so little chance of this happening that they don't need to take that seriously. But the fact that Delaney's talking about it with a certain seriousness and a certain weight. Now he's hedged a bit and said, this isn't as much a formal proposal as it is a talking point, but he's put it out there enough and brought it up repeatedly to the point where that at the very least Delaney wants that, even if it's not realistic. And that alone, and voicing that publicly, is kind of a problem for the conference, I think.
On another topic, ace Devin Gardner, released by the Patriots a week ago, within 24 hours, signed as free agent by the Steelers. It sure didn't seem like he got much of a look from New England, did it?
No, it sounds like he got into rookie minicamp and he ran a few routes, and that was about it. That's a pretty short stint, but it's a really tough transition to go from quarterback to wide receiver, even though at the NFL level. I mean, I know Gardner played a little bit in 2012 here at wide out, but even then he was pretty raw, especially in terms of his stuff, the finer points of playing receiver, route running, stuff like that, where when you're getting in the NFL level, that's stuff that they don't necessarily want to spend a ton of time teaching you the very basics unless it's obvious that you're going to make the roster. And for an undrafted free agent, that's not really the case. So it's going to be kind of a tough road I think, for Gardner to latch on and stay on a roster. At least the 53-man roster. I think he's an ideal candidate to put on a practice squad and see how he develops over the course of the season. But it's going to be a tough road, though. His athletic ability, I wouldn't put anything past him, but it's not going to be easy to stick.
No, he's a good kid, works hard, very bright. So, I mean, we all wish him the best. Switching back and forth, we all know the story at U of M. So, he's behind the 8 ball. It's tough for anybody, any young player that's an undrafted free agent, but he has a lot to overcome.
Yeah. I mean, and we saw last year Jeremy Gallen get cut by the very same Patriots, and he obviously had a different set of issues, being around 5'9", but and Gardner's obviously got more physical capability, but Gallen was obviously way ahead in terms of the receiving experience there. So it's tough. The NFL, it's just not easy for anybody.
With us on our Game Day Extra segment this week is Ace Anbender from MGoBlog, who does such a great job covering Michigan football, basketball, and anything else maize and blue. And we're sort of all over the map on today's show because it's just that time of the year. There's a lot of news, but not a lot of pressing news. Ace, getting back to Jim Harbaugh for just another minute. He stirred the pot in April, announcing his satellite camp appearances. Quite a few coaches. Most notably, SEC and ACC guys want this topic discussed at upcoming NCAA meetings. Is this, in your opinion, much ado about nothing, or do you see some changes coming when it comes to these camps?
It seems like this is a recruiting loophole that's going to be closed. Recruiting tends to have these issues where every once in a while, every few years, somebody notices a loophole in the rules and really exploits the heck out of it. And right now, Michigan's really doing that with the satellite camp thing. And other programs have done, James Franklin had his satellite camp last year in SEC country, but that was a one-off thing. To do a whole countrywide tour, I don't think that was ever the intent of the rule. And obviously, it's getting a rise out of the coaches across the country at this point, because Michigan's not really skipping any major football hotbeds here. So I think that's something, given the outcry, that's either going to be overhauled in terms of the rule, where they put a limitation on the number of those that you can do, or they just close the loophole entirely, because it's not something that is necessary for these coaches to recruit. It's a luxury to be able to go and guest coach at another coach's camp. And the way Michigan's kind of done it, where sure, their camp in Alabama is hosted by Prattville or whatever, but it's definitely a Michigan camp. And I don't think that was the intent of the rule. And I love seeing Michigan taking advantage of it while it's on the books. I think what they're doing this summer is really impressive and incredible in terms of the amount of work that they're putting into recruiting too. But I'm not sure how long this is going to last.
Well, yeah, it sounds like with the SEC coaches, most notably Nick Saban, and the ACC jumping on the bandwagon, it's at least going to be discussed at the upcoming NCAA meetings. I thought it was interesting with Mr. Delaney, who a lot of times I scratch my head after I listen to what he has to say, but I thought it was interesting, his comeback, when he said, come on, don't we have some other things to talk about than these camps? Let's talk about gray shirting, giving too many scholarships out. I thought that was a very interesting comeback by Jim.
Yeah, I mean, good on him for responding to SEC coaches complaining about recruiting with some very legitimate recruiting gripes that really center on the SEC style of recruiting. I'm not a huge fan of what comes out of Delaney's mouth a lot of the time, but that one I thought was pretty good. Especially harping on oversigning, because that's something that the SEC has done for quite a while, and it is in a very moral gray area at best. I thought it was good on him to bring that up when these coaches are complaining about satellite camps, that, well, it may give one school an advantage over another. It's also great for the athletes, for the high school kids, to be able to show up to a local camp and get instruction from a really quality college coaching staff. And from their end, there's not really a downside here. It's just from the perspective of those SEC schools. But with oversigning, they're actually student athletes that get really hurt there. I mean, you had the situation, the canonical example a while ago of Les Miles asking a recruit who had already moved into the dorm and told him that he was getting gray shirted and was going to have to move out. That's a whole lot worse to me than anything involving Michigan having a camp somewhere besides Michigan.
Another hot topic in college football circles recently has been fifth-year players transferring to another school to use their last year of eligibility. And it does seem to be happening more frequently these days. It's within the rules, but some ADs, they don't like it. Do you think the NCAA can or even will try to change a rule like that?
It looks like they're going to look at it. I hope they leave it as is. But if you're going to encourage a transfer of any sort, I think this would be the one that you should, where the requirement for even being eligible is that you already have to have obtained your degree. So you're obviously in good academic standing. You're looking to pursue usually a master's degree and, heading into a grad program. I don't see any reason to discourage that. And if your reward for making it through 4 years of a college program and earning your degree and staying in good academic standing is that you get to kind of become a college free agent of sorts, and people will kind of balk at that, but I don't see any problem with these guys getting a choice of where they want to go for their last year of school, especially for the guys that are coming up from smaller programs where they haven't really had a chance to compete for a national title or anything, or even a big-time conference title. And maybe they were guys that weren't very highly recruited out of high school who ended up really flourishing in college and then have the opportunity to maybe go to one of these big-time programs for a year, get some high-level coaching, get the major college football experience, and also have a year of grad school under their belt. I mean, even if these guys don't finish these programs, they're still advancing their learning. For me, the grad transfer thing is, and I know for coaches it can be inconvenient, but this isn't all about the coaches. And I think from an athlete perspective, it's one of the most athlete-friendly rules the NCAA has, and I hope it stays that way.
Well, on basketball topic, Ace, a week ago, Chris Webber was on the Dan Patrick Show, took some shots at Jalen Rose and some of the other Fab Five. Jalen returned fire on the Larry Brown Sports Show. Do you think Michigan fans are getting tired of this Fab Five squabble?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sick of it myself. I worshipped the Fab Five growing up, and they happened kind of right before I really got into Michigan sports, and that was kind of the gold standard for a while. And then even after the sanctions hit, I love those guys. But at this point, I just don't care anymore. I really can't bring myself to care about it. And their internal squabbles, I would wish they would keep them more internal. I think, especially since Michigan's had so much success under John Beilein and have done it with teams that are eminently likable, there's just not a whole lot of room for Michigan fans to really want to listen to stuff like this because things are going so well in basketball. We've got players that people really like. Nobody wants to concern themselves with what these guys are arguing about, I don't think.
Well, until they get their little thing ironed out, whatever the problem is, I don't think that the athletic department would even entertain honoring them, whatever you want to call it, in the next few years.
No, it doesn't seem like it. The restriction's been lifted off of Weber. He's allowed to be back on campus again and whatever, and nothing's really moved on that front. So it seems like they're kind of waiting to see if the Fab Five actually wants to be in the same room at the same time, seemingly, before they're actually going to put them there. It'll be interesting to see whether or not they actually are able to get past this at some point. But for now, it's just I'm kind of at the stage of rolling my eyes whenever I see a Fab Five headline come across my feed because you know what it's going to be and you know the people are going to talk about it, but it's not necessarily going to be a fun discussion.
No, I think we're all tired of that. Last question for you, Ace. As we all know, it's that quiet time in Michigan athletics. Next month, though, preseason publications are going to start hitting the stands. It seems Michigan fans, that I talk to, either they're over the top with enthusiasm and expectations, or they're on the other end of the spectrum where they are more realistic and they say Coach Harbaugh needs time to establish his program. So folks are all over the map. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Is it a cop-out to say somewhere in the middle there? I think the over-the-top, I think you can forget about the over-the-top expectations about a Big Ten title. especially with how strong Ohio State's going to be this year. It's just kind of tough to see the turnaround happening that quickly, especially since it would probably necessitate a win over Ohio State. And man, those guys are going to be good. And Michigan State is also still obviously ahead of Michigan's program right now. Michigan's going to have to take care of that too. So, to get past those two, to kind of have the season that the more optimistic fans are hoping for, would be pretty difficult, pretty surprising if they'd be able to knock off both those teams. And also the non-conference portion of the schedule it's not incredibly hard. There isn't a top 10 team on there or anything, but there's some tricky games there. Flying out to Utah for the opener is not going to be easy, and neither is going to be hosting BYU at Michigan Stadium. And also, we saw in the spring game, I think my biggest concern about the team and what might hold them back from being a contender in the Big Ten is there's so much uncertainty at the skill positions on offense. We assume Jake Rudock's going to start at quarterback. That's kind of I'd say a high floor, low ceiling guy to have as your quarterback, which is probably better than what Michigan was going to have if he didn't transfer in. But it's not like they're plugging in a superstar there. This isn't a Russell Wilson grad transfer, and then nobody knows who's going to start at running back. But they haven't had great production out of that position the last few years, and the wide receivers, people aren't sure how that's going to shake out either, and they certainly weren't very impressive in the spring game. And there's just a lot of unproven talent there. I think it's going to take a year for guys to kind of figure out what their role is in this program, for Harbaugh to figure out what he's got and how he wants to use it, and a year to acclimate to the system. Right? It's a new coach, and things are going to be run quite differently from when Hoke was here. I think that's obviously a good thing, but that does still involve a transition. And my expectations are more in the 8-4 range, I'd say right now, which after the last few years, I think would be great. That's a turnaround I think most fans will be able to live with, especially if there are obvious signs of improvement on the field. And I think that's going to be almost the bigger gauge as opposed to the record is kind of one of the things that really made the last few years so difficult to watch, was that it was just ugly football. It was tough to watch, and I think hopefully with Harbaugh, there will be enough obvious signs of progress, and there will be enough, watching the offense and having a good idea of what they're trying to do and seeing them execute some plays. You can see what the potential is and where this should be going. I think that'll offset some concerns about whatever record he's going to post in year one.
Well, a lot to worry about, a lot to think about, but let's all take some time and enjoy summer. It's all going to be here. Football camp, preseason publications very soon. So, Ace, as usual, great to have you on the show today with us on our Game Day Extra segment. Ace Anbender from MGoBlog, and most of us are daily visitors to MGoBlog and enjoy Brian and Ace and everyone's work over there. You guys do a fantastic job, so get some downtime, Ace, and we look forward to having you back on soon.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
It's exciting times for Michigan softball and baseball. We'll touch on that next with Wolverine Quick Hits, here on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the Big Ten Conference Tournament champion University of Michigan baseball team has been assigned to the Louisville, Kentucky NCAA Regional and will open play at 2 p.m. this Friday against Bradley, an at-large selection out of the Missouri Valley Conference. Host Louisville and Morehead State are the other two teams in the double elimination regional that will be run Friday through Monday, May 29th through June 1st at Jim Patterson Stadium. Michigan, 37-23, earned the Big Ten's automatic berth into the NCAA tournament with a 4-3 win over Maryland in the Big Ten tournament's championship game. The Wolverines are one of 5 Big Ten teams, Illinois, Iowa, Maryland, and Indiana, to make the NCAA field, and U of M is in the field for the first time since 2008. The Wolverines again enter tournament play with a record of 37-23, so congratulations to Coach Bakich, and good luck at the Louisville Regionals beginning this Friday. The number 3 ranked University of Michigan softball team rallied from an early deficit and staved off a late comeback to knock off number 14 Georgia 7-6 and claim an NCAA Super Regional sweep on Friday, May 22nd in front of 2,582 fans at the Wilpon Complex, home of Alumni Field. With the victory, their 25th in a row, the Wolverines advanced to the Women's College World Series for the 11th time in program history and second time in 3 seasons. Senior pitcher Haley Wagner, 22-2, earned the victory in relief, striking out 6 while allowing 3 runs, 2 earned, on 7 hits and no walks. Sophomore pitcher Megan Betza, who was pulled after allowing a pair of home runs in the first inning, re-entered with 2 outs and the winning run at the plate in the bottom of the 7th, and forced a game-ending pop-out to secure her 4th save of the season. Junior right fielder Kelly Sisala and senior catcher Lauren Sweet combined for 5 hits and 4 ribbies in the number 4 and number 5 spots. Sisala matched her career best with 3 base hits, including a second-inning home run to put U of M on the board. Junior center fielder Sierra Lawrence also posted a pair of hits, while Wagner helped out her own cause with a 4th-inning shot, her 2nd of the season. The Wolverines will begin play in the Women's College World Series this Thursday in Oklahoma City, facing Alabama at 6 p.m. Central Time. Number 3 Michigan brings a 56-6 record into tournament play. Good luck to Coach Carol Hutchins and the Wolverines in the Women's College World Series, and congratulations on another great season. Don't forget you can now get our free app at the iTunes Store. Just search for The Michigan Man, and you'll be able to follow news of your Wolverines easier than ever. We're also available in the Google Play Store for Android users and the Windows 8 App Store. Thanks again to my guest today, recruiting analyst Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports and Ace Anbender from MGoBlog. As I keep reminding you, we're on our summer schedule of 2 shows a month right now. That's May, June, and July. So that means our next show will publish on June 10th. Our scheduled guest is Big Ten Network studio analyst Mike Hall. So I hope you'll join us for that. Follow me on Twitter at The Michigan Man and Wolverine Sports Radio at Go Blue Radio. That will do it for another show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine couple of weeks, everyone. Again, we'll see you back here on June 10th with our next show. Thanks for joining us here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a part of the V Sporto Network. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast. You can find us on the web at www.themichiganmanpodcast.com or www.maizenbrew.com. Our listener line is open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or you can email your thoughts and opinions to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is brought to you in partnership with Maizen Brew, your best source for quality Michigan Wolverine news, analysis, stats, and scores from the fan perspective. Visit www.maizenbrew.com for the best coverage of your Wolverines. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!